Hey, VC, what's up? So we got another Thursday night get together with three of my best friends in the vinyl community. We got Gary from Physical Format Rock and Roll, looking ruggedly handsome as ever. Chris Prophy, the eye candy of the VC, looking sweet as leather Duchess t-shirt, and the superstar of the group, we got Josh, who just hit 3,000 subscribers. Congratulations, Josh.
Thank you, guys.
We're just lucky to know you. We're
riding
lucky
your
to
coattails,
let us
baby.
hang out with you. But all kidding aside, though, we are here tonight because we want to talk about 5 albums that are on our reissue wish list, whether it's Record Store Day, whether it's just, come on, just please, will you re-release these albums on vinyl? So we picked 5 records, or I should say 5 albums that we would love to see reissued on vinyl. And we're going to go around and share each of our 5. And we're going to start with Gary. So Gary, what is your first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Second of all, what's your first record, Gary?
Well, my first pick is one that makes sense because I think it's from the 90s. And I know that, I don't know, nobody seems to talk about this artist too much, but I picked The Globe Sessions by Sheryl Crow.
Nice.
Her first 3 records, to me, that was kind of, oh, you want to look at that? That was kind of, how every artist has that period of time there. To me, those first 3 records were just really good. The Tuesday Night Music Club, the self-titled album, and then this. I just think this would be great to be able to have on vinyl. I think it would sound awesome on vinyl. There's so many songs on here that I would love to hear that warmth that you get when you play vinyl, because there's like quiet moments on here. There's rocking moments on here. The bass already sounds pretty good on this. So to be able to hear it on vinyl, I think would be fantastic. And, Sheryl Crow just doesn't have that much on vinyl out there. I think a lot of it is because of the time period that, she was out. And this record, I don't know, I feel like you hear more about the first 2 records than you do this third one. But this is a very solid record. And I would love to see this, maybe if it came out on a Record Store Day, they could add a couple live tracks onto it, something like that, make it a double record. And I just think it would be great. I mean, hopefully, there's a inside picture. Hopefully it would sell well. I don't know what her fan base is like at this time, but, she was pretty popular. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. I think the single off here was My Favorite Mistake, which was actually a song she wrote about Eric Clapton. She was in a brief relationship with Eric Clapton, so I believe she wrote that about him. There Goes the Neighborhood, I think might have been another single. I know that was on the radio over here. I love River Wide. That song for me is like the ringer on this album. I love that track. It reminds me of a song that Robert Plant, Plant and Page, would have recorded together. But yeah, it's a fantastic album. It's not stylistically all that different from her self-titled, the second album that she released. But I think, this is fantastic. And I'd love to see that. If that was on vinyl, I'd snap that up in a hot second.
Yeah, I love all those songs you mentioned. There's also a song on here called The Difficult Kind, which is one of my favorite Sheryl Crow songs. I'm pretty sure all of you guys would like that song. Maybe not every song on here, but I know your guys' taste, and I'm pretty sure you would all like that song.
Yeah, another great breakup song, It Don't Hurt. Is another kind of a gritty, sort of one of those ironic breakup songs where, oh, it don't hurt. Well, yeah, it does. Otherwise, you wouldn't be singing about it,
Love it.
All right. Well, Chris, what's your first one?
Well, I went into this a little differently. I'm actually going to show albums that are on vinyl, but they're older, and I almost feel like these would warrant like a new reissue. Maybe, a record store day reissue, 180 gram reissue. A lot of times when they reissue these records, they'll add extra tracks, things like that. So, I kind of picked out some albums that, again, are already on vinyl, but they're older editions that I'd like to kind of see reissued. And this is a band that could really benefit from that, and it's Steppenwolf. And we don't talk a lot about Steppenwolf, but Steppenwolf rocks. And they kind of get just remembered for Born to Be Wild, but they have so many great songs, so many great albums. They kind of did a whole bunch of different styles of rock, biker rock, hard rock, even some psychedelic stuff. This is their album, For Ladies Only. I think this was released in 1971. But let's reissue some of these. Let's add some bonus tracks. Let's do some 180 gram vinyl on this. I think it would be kind of neat to see.
Yeah, I think there's probably a good market for it. I mean, you do see other people out there in the VC show older Steppenwolf albums. I was kind of surprised when I joined the VC of how many people out there are talking about it. Because you can find some of their records fairly cheap, but like you said, Chris, it would be nice to hear them reissued, remastered on 180 gram. I mean, nice and clean and everything like that. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, because a lot of times when you come across this record at the record store, it's beat up, the cover's beat up, because there hasn't been a reissue of this in a while. So let's think outside the box a little bit. I feel like a lot of the same albums are reissued from a lot of the same sort of bands, and I think we just kind of need to branch out a little bit. Yeah.
Very cool pick.
I personally think that we're in the golden age of the reissue, because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was collecting, I never dreamed that we would see some of the reissues we see now, because the record collecting niche was so small, right? So I do think that there have been some reissues like Resurrection by Alpert that I never thought we'd see. So we are seeing some great things. And the first one is one of my all-time favorite grails. So Morrissey, and I'm going to spotlight, even though he had 4 albums on Attack, I'm going to spotlight these 2. So Morrissey was on an upward trajectory most of his career. He was with the Smiths. They were one of the biggest bands of the 80s, went on to a solo career, and every album was outselling it. And then towards the end of the 90s, he came crashing down. And he regrouped and he made this album, which is my all-time favorite Morrissey album. And if I was ranking Morrissey and the Smiths together, right, this would have, this entire album would list in my top 50 Morrissey/Smith songs. There's not one bad song on this album. It is a masterpiece. And it's actually got a great song about his career, I Knew I Wouldn't Last, where he talks about how he was chasing the cash registers. He goes, he knew the kids would eventually not be into him. He wouldn't be favored anymore. It's just a fantastic album. So on Attack, he made this. This album sells for about $500. He did this, which is Morrissey's definitive live album. He does Smith songs. I think it has the definitive version of There's a Light That'll Never Go Out and the definitive version of Shoplifters of the World. So he does Smith songs. He does Morrissey songs. It is an incredible live album. This is another $500 vinyl if you were to find it. He has 2 other albums on Attack, Ringleader of the Tormentors and Swords, which I would go for those 2. But these 2 are my all-time grails. That's my number 5. I love Morrissey. I love the Smiths. And 2 of my favorite albums by him.
Yeah, there's kind of always been an ebb and flow to Morrissey's career because, you had Viva Hate, which, was his first album after the Smiths, which did really well. Then you had Bone of Drag, which was a collection of singles. And there were actually some tracks off of Viva Hate on Bone of Drag, which was kind of like, oh, sort of like what they did with the Smiths, where you're buying the same songs on 3 different albums, you know, in some cases. And then he had Kill Uncle, which really kind of almost tanked his career because it was such a mediocre album. And it was really a departure from, you know, the stuff that he had put out before. And so you thought, okay, well, that's kind of it for Morrissey. Then he totally storms back with Your Arsenal. And then it's like, yes, he's back. And then even Vauxhall and I, or however you pronounce it, that was a great album. And then, you know, he did the thing where he releases a couple albums of, okay, well, this has got a lot of stuff I already own. He's kind of regurgitating, repackaging some of his old singles and stuff like that. And then it sort of felt like he was just going to fade away again. And then, like you say, that album came out and, you know, it's like, yeah, he's not gone. He's totally, you know, he's off of life support and back in the charts and back, you know, being relevant again.
Right. And I don't know if you agree with me, but every song on here I think is great.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he almost knew, like, he had to come up with the goods or risk, you know, kind of becoming a, you know, a has-been. But
yeah.
What year did that come out?
2000, I think. Yeah,
okay.
Either 2000 or 2001. So yeah, awesome album.
Well, it's kind of ironic because the album that I'm going to show has a Smiths connection also, although it's not strictly credited to a member of the Smiths. I'm going with the Mind Bomb, which Johnny Marr is on this album. He was a member of the band for this album only, I think. It's actually him right there. But yeah, great album. You know, the first two albums were kind of strictly synth pop, and then he kind of moved away from that. Infected, which is my favorite, the album was you know, the one that was released right before this. But it's a very mature album. It's you know, it's classified as alternative, but Matt Johnson, who is the obviously he's the main impetus behind the band because it's only his face on the cover, but great singer-songwriter. He's got some topical, he's almost like an alternative Roger Waters, I guess I would say, because he sings about topical stuff. Got kind of an unusual voice, but it's just a great album to sit with. It's not loud, it's not noisy, but it's just great music to kind of chill to. I'm not sure what else I would compare it to. Maybe a little bit like Talk, some of their stuff like Spirit of Eden era. But yeah, just a great, this came out in, I want to say 88, maybe 88 or 89. And it's strictly guitar, bass, you know, a little bit of keyboards in there. Almost reminds me a little bit of like Plastic Ono Band, where it's just kind of like a stripped down sound. There's a little bit of other accompaniment on it, but it's very raw and it's melodic. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with but I think they're one of those kind of bands that get overlooked when you're talking about great 80s bands or great music that came out of the 1980s.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I'm surprised we haven't seen a reissue. That seems like something that Rhino would do for their Rocktober. That's shocking that we haven't seen it.
Yeah. But all right, Gary, your next one.
Okay, this next pick, Chris might appreciate this, but you guys will hate it. But I am going with Patty Loveless, Only What I Feel. But when I say that, I'm actually kind of talking about just that album and, you know, maybe some other country artists of that era of the 90s. I definitely think that there would be a market for that. You know, whether it's some of Patty Loveless's really good albums that she made during this time period, Mary Chapin Carpenter, some more of Emmylou Harris, just, you know, different artists that Surprisingly, they have not reissued any of this stuff, and it's very hard to find. I mean, for instance, I was in a record shop a few weeks back, and they had a copy of Tanya Tucker, which I can't think of the title of the album, but it's the one where she's got a sombrero on. But anyway, it was $35 for that. And, you know, I mean, it was in pretty good shape. It wasn't even the best, but to me, the fact that they're pricing it like that, and it seemed so hard to find any of those albums around that time period, that it makes sense to reissue it. I would love it. To me, you know, a lot of that music just seems, once again, fits the vinyl format perfectly. The sound of it, you know, I mean, they've done stuff with like Willie Nelson, and Dwight Yoakam has had some of his stuff done, but even that, they could do more with Dwight Yoakam as far as I'm concerned. But I just think that's a genre that needs to be tapped into further.
Nice.
Well, the 90s, I mean, the 90s country was huge. That was like,
Yeah,
that was like the resurgence of country. It was like, you know, that traditional sound, but with a little bit more, you know, electric guitars and things added to it, but it still sounded like country music. I mean,
yeah,
that was the age of Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson and Mark Chestnut,
Right.
and Patty Loveless and all those singers. So,
And I'd like to say that one of my favorite country albums of all time, the Mavericks with Trampoline,
Yeah.
that I would sleep overnight for that album. It's so good. 90s country is neglected.
yeah.
Well, I think with a lot of people, like say, like my wife, for example. So she likes that 80s rock, you know, especially the more well-known, not like some of the 80s rock we all like, but she likes, you know, all that kind of stuff. Well, when things started going, you know, the way of the Soundgardens and all those kind of bands, she and a lot of people turned to country, to 90s country. So there was a big market for that because, you know, she had no interest in Nirvana or things like that. And I get that. But a lot of those people turn to country music. And I just think it's a market there. I cannot believe that they don't have more reissues of that.
I think one of the problems is people don't really know what country music should sound like anymore, because you have a lot of the bro country now, or whatever I hate it, whatever you want to call it. But I think people have lost that sound, and it's almost like they're scared to tap into it. Like, oh my gosh, it's a song with a fiddle on it. Well, you know what? It's a freaking country song. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that might play a part in it too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
A lot of the country now is like line dancing music, you know, like any of that new country. It's kind of lost the charm of the original.
Or
you know,
they try to mix in like some kind of really god awful rap stuff into country, which is just like, it's like something Weird Al would do. You know, I don't even get it. I hear country songs now, and I'm like, this is just laughable. It is so bad, so bad.
yeah, it's like watered down.
I mean, I like somebody like Chris Stapleton. Now he's good. You know, I do like him, but most male country singers nowadays are just horrid.
Give me Johnny Cash any day.
Save a horse, ride a cowboy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, my next pick is Big and Rich. So teaser alert. And then Brooks and Dunn is my next pick after that. So
well, I left for a bit because I grabbed a few CDs, because I'm like, all right, let me kind of go the route you guys were thinking of, like something that's on CD that has not been on vinyl. So like I said, I was thinking of it in a different way, but I pulled out this is Michael Nesmith's album Raise, and this is from 2005.
Wow.
And I just looked on Discogs to make sure, because I don't want to give people the wrong information, but this was not issued on vinyl at all. And this is just a really, really unique album for Michael Nesmith. It's almost electronic and ambient and sort of like not what you would picture for a Michael Nesmith album. A lot of times we think, you know, country rock or, you know, acoustic rock, or even, you know, he did an album called Tropical Campfires where he brought some like Brazilian flair into the music. But this is something totally different. I would love to see this on vinyl, though. I mean, it's got kick-ass artwork, and I would love to see it sort of blown up into that vinyl, you know, size. So yeah, I thought this was a kind of a cool idea for an album to reissue.
Well, now that he passed away, I mean, maybe they'll start, you know, looking at some of those albums and reissuing those on vinyl.
Yeah, and you know, I think this is an album that a lot of people have probably never heard too. You know,
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, but yeah, so Michael Nesmith raised some good stuff.
I love that cover art.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like on vinyl, that would be killer.
It's a great pick.
Yeah,
I think a better cover would have been if they had like one picture of Ray Manzarek, another picture of Ray Davies, another picture of but
right.
Yeah.
So my next band is their entire catalog needs to be reissued on vinyl. They're one of my favorite bands of all time, but definitely one of my favorite bands of the 90s. They're progressive metal, and that's Tool. I feel like this is their best album, Anima, which I absolutely love. This is a super expensive record. Another one's like $500. It's a masterpiece in terms of progressive metal. I can't get enough of it. I don't talk about Tool a lot because a lot of their stuff is not on vinyl. I do have a bootleg of this, and it sounds great, but I really want an official press. Yeah, and I know the fans really want it too. So Tool, that's my next choice. Their entire catalog.
That should be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I can't believe it's. I really can't believe it. Because progressive music is so popular right now, and they're one of the biggest bands. I mean, they just announced a tour. The entire tour sold out in like minutes. They're still one, and it's stadium tour, one of the biggest bands in the United States, and almost all of their albums are out of print.
Well, I've never understood that. Like, do you not want our money? Do you not? I mean, there's tons of Tool fans, and it's just like money waiting to be grabbed up because, you know, they do an official release like that, whether it's Record Store Day or whether it's just, you know, a reissue. I mean, that thing's going to sell out like crazy because people, you know, I mean, a lot of people who are Tool fans are going to want to get that on vinyl and Lateralis and whatever else, you know.
Yeah, well, they would hit like a couple different age groups. You know, they've been around long enough that they're going to get those young kids that are just first time vinyl people, and they're going to get some older people who are like getting back into vinyl. And so, you know, that seems like a no-brainer too. I can't believe that their catalog is not available.
It's insane. Yeah, I mean, and they held up for a long time. They weren't on Apple Music. Their last CD was a limited edition. Like, who makes a limited edition CD? Not like, oh, you could buy the limited edition or the regular edition. No, it was, we're only releasing the limited edition. Once it's sold out, it's sold out. They really must not want the money.
Well, I mean, but like you said, I mean, they got to be doing something right.
Yeah.
You know, you just said how they sold out. They're still popular. They still have managed to be a popular band, but yet still have kind of an underground kind of feel to them.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe that's what they're going for.
Maybe.
All right. Well, my next album is by a band that was huge in the 1970s. I mean, all over the radio. They had a string of fantastic albums. And it's one of those bands, the 1980s hit, and suddenly nobody wanted to know. I mean, I think they had a few minor hits. I think the last hit that they had was in early 80s, just as MTV was coming around. And then they just kind of broke up. And then the grunge thing happened, and they put their toe back in the water. I should say Jeff Lynne put his toe back in the water and said, hey, you miss me? And the collective music buying public said, nope. And in fact, he wanted to tour this album. And if you've ever seen Spinal Tap, where, you know, their career is such that, like at SeaWorld, they're second billing to a puppet show. That's kind of like what ELO was at, where they had to quit their tour after, I think, 3 shows because nobody was coming. There were more people working concessions than there were in the audience. So, I mean, Jeff Lynne kind of put his tail between his legs and slinked off. Nobody bought this album. It kind of faded away. I think there might even be ELO fans who aren't even aware of this album, but it's a shame because this album is great. This album it should have, for all intents and purposes, been a comeback because this is an amazing album. Jeff Lynne rolled up his sleeves, melodies, I mean, catchy tracks. Some of my favorite ELO songs, believe it or not, are on this album. If you're a Beatles fan, you can tell, I mean, the Beatles influence is just all over this album. I think George Harrison and Ringo Starr, as a matter of fact, actually play on this album. So it was a fantastic album, and it's a shame because nobody bought it. It was the whole grunge thing going on. ELO was like, oh my God, ELO, don't they have that song, Don't Bring Me Down? And people just kind of rolled their eyes and never gave it a chance. And I don't even think it's available on CD anymore. I think it's totally out of print in any format. But I would love this is the last album under the name Electric Light Orchestra before Jeff Lynne started going by Jeff Lynne's ELO. But I mean, it's basically a Jeff Lynne solo album, but he thought it'd be a little bit more marketable if he used the name Electric Light Orchestra. But it's a great, great album. I would love to see it on vinyl. It's the only ELO album that is not available on vinyl, at least as far as I know anyway. So yeah, that being a big ELO fan like I am, nothing would make me happier than to get that issued on vinyl.
That's fantastic that it's the only one that's not. There's so many completists out there that must be going nuts. Now, how was Jeff Lynne's solo? Remember after he did the Wilburys and he produced Tom Petty and he produced George Harrison, did he make one Armchair something?
Armchair Theater, I think it was called. Yeah.
Was that good?
Yeah, it's okay, but I mean, this I think is still a better album. But I don't know if Armchair Theater is on vinyl or not. I've got it on cassette, but I've never seen it on vinyl. That'd be another good one to issue as well. But I just don't think there's a lot of people clamoring for ELO music. You know, I mean, I feel like, you know, as we were talking before the show, where it's like, you know, I listen to stuff that, you know, not many people are into, and, you know, it's not terribly like rare or collectible stuff, but I gotta believe anybody who's an ELO fan would love to see that on vinyl because, I mean, you can't even find it on CD. But it's a great,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, especially like if you would do it as a record store day exclusive. You know, here's basically the missing ELO album. You know, and they're more popular again now. You know, timing is everything, right? You know, I mean, there were all kinds of bands that during that time period, whatever they put out, you know, everybody be like, they're old has-beens, I don't care. And then 20 years later, even though they're older, they're like, oh no, this band is great. You know, it's like people go back and rediscover all that kind of stuff. I think that's a fantastic idea for a record store day release.
Yeah, I really wish, you know, there was a greater appreciation for Electric Light Orchestra because, I mean, they really don't have a bad album. And they had a lot of hits in the 1970s, but I like some of their, you know, non-single or their stuff that wasn't on the radio. They got some great deep tracks on their albums that don't get a lot of play and a lot of people aren't aware of, but you know, all of it's been reissued on CD, so it's all available. But even Zoom was not reissued. They did reissue remasters of all the ELO catalog, but not that one. And I've got an ELO box set, you know, of all their studio albums, but Zoom is not on there either. It's almost like Jeff Lynne has sort of forgotten about it, or, I don't know why, because it's a great album, but it's sort of like one of those that is faded into obscurity.
Right.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's my turn. I'm going on this one. Actually, I wasn't going to do this, but Chris inspired me on his first pick. And I think a band, they did it on the last record store day, but I think they should do more of them. And that's Uriah Heep. They redid Magician's Birthday. That seemed to be popular. A lot of people were talking. I mean, people in the vinyl community talk about Uriah Heep a lot. I've noticed, until I joined this thing, I never heard anybody talk about Uriah Heep. And, their albums, you can find them out there. It's not necessarily that hard, but like we were saying, a lot of times they're beat up. I had a copy of Magician's Birthday, but when they reissued it, I'm like, this is a nice, clean copy. I know it's going to sound, and it does sound great. It's a great sounding record. Any of those 70s records, man, when they reissue them, they always sound good, I think, unless they dick around with them too much. But I think they could, easily do another one of Salisbury or Look at Yourself, something like that. And I think it'd be great. I'd pick it up, even though I have an old copy of it. If I could get a nice, clean, copy of it redone. I mean, look at like what Steven Wilson has done for so many bands, for Jethro Tull and beyond. And even though you have the old copy, it's like, oh man, if I get this remastered copy, I don't know. I just like to see him do more of that of Uriah Heep.
Good choice.
I like it. I think that you're right. It would be super popular because 70s rock is where it's at, right? It's like,
yeah,
it is. I think it's
sounds good. And Uriah Heep is more popular, even more popular in Europe and stuff than they are here in the States. So it would sell over there also.
Nice choice.
Thank you.
Well, my next pick is probably not going to be popular with anybody except for Gary. Gary and I seem to have this like connection. And I don't really even know how much Gary likes this artist, but it's Janis Ian. I know that Gary has. Okay. Yeah, I know Gary has a couple of Janis Ian albums, but she came out with an album in 2000 called God and the FBI, and it's a really, really good album. It's, a lot of times with Janis Ian's productions, they're very sparse and very acoustic, but this one, she has a full band backing her. Also, she does a duet with Willie Nelson on this record as well. The song is called Memphis. And like I said, it's a duet with Willie. And I would like to see it on vinyl. And it was never released on vinyl. It's got one of my favorite songs by her called She Must Be Beautiful. It's just a killer track. Again, I've worn out the CD. It's time to get this on vinyl. So Janis Ian fans, the 10 of us that are out there,
yes,
would probably run out to the store to buy that one. So
I'd buy that.
Yeah. So Gary, I would say check this album out. Like I said, there's a duet with Willie on here. It's very there's a lot of different sort of textures to the album. It's a really good record.
What's it called again?
God and the FBI.
God and the FBI. I should be able to remember that.
Yeah. And I'm sure you can pick up the CD pretty cheap.
Yeah, I'll get that off of Amazon.
So my next one is by an artist that I can't believe all of his albums are not out on vinyl, because I remember reading an interview with him in the 90s where he said that there was a long period of time that Pet Sounds was out of print. You just couldn't buy it. It wasn't on CD yet. The record wasn't in print. You had to go searching to be able to buy Pet Sounds. And he talked about all these great albums that were out of print. And pretty much every single one of his albums is out of print. Now, is he a great artist like the Beach Boys? That's to be debated. but I do love this artist, and many people hate this artist, and that is the Counting Crows. Their first two albums you can pretty much find, but everything else you can't. And I want to spotlight these two albums because this was released on vinyl. If you look at the back, it actually has side 1 and side 2. So it was, obviously an homage to the olden days of records. It has one of their biggest songs, Colorblind, and Hard Candy was never released on vinyl. And I feel like these are just as good as their first two. Their first 4 albums are fantastic. This was late 90s. This was early 2000. Why do people hate Counting Crows? Some people don't like the singer's voice. I think the biggest criticism of the Counting Crows that most people I meet is something that I absolutely love about them is when you go see them in concert, it's a lot like Bruce Springsteen or Bob Dylan. Bruce Springsteen can sing Thunder Road 10,000 different ways. I remember Melissa Estridge saying that one time she played with Springsteen and she's like, he started the song in a completely different key because Springsteen's going to sing it in a way that he wants his voice to inflect how he's feeling at that moment. So he'll sing a lyric and emphasize a specific lyric because he wants the audience to pay attention to that particular sentence or word. Counting Crows do the exact same thing. They can play songs that are almost unrecognizable at times. They're like, why did they sing it like that? So I've seen a lot of people that leave the concert and they go, man, I hated how they did Round Here, which I loved it because I'm not looking to hear a studio rendition. I'd rather have an artist take a different take on it. And whether they fail or they succeed, it's always interesting to experience something new. And that's what I love about live music is it's not meant to be the CD. So Counting Crows, one of my favorite bands, one of the most hated bands I would probably say that I love. And both of these albums, this is almost $1,000 record. I saw it on eBay the other day. Someone was charging $1,200. They didn't get it, but someone did sell for $900. So, and this had never been released. So,
what do you do with a $900 record?
I would sell it because I couldn't play it. I would be too nervous to play it. I would probably sell it and go buy 300 other records.
I don't want to divert or get away from the topic too much, but you just mentioned something about live music, and some people really don't. When it comes to live music, they can't take it actually being live. And I was just thinking of the Super Bowl halftime show, how, like say when the Who were on there or the Stones, you had a bunch of people go, oh, Jesus, they sound horrible, because they were actually playing live. They were singing, they didn't have just backing music and everything behind them. They were playing live. And it seems like people really like the live shows at the Super Bowl. Like, this last Super Bowl halftime we had was like a mixture. There were parts of it that were live, but there were parts of it that was all pre-recorded. And people are like, oh, they sounded really good, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, but when somebody's on there and it's half of it's pre-recorded, don't talk to me about the drummer and this and that because it's all fake. And I would rather hear it live, warts and all, than a bunch of backing stuff and pre-recorded shit. And if it sounds a little bit different than the song, if they interpret it a little bit different, fine. If it's in a different keys and because the artist is older and they don't have that range anymore, that's all right. Let me hear what you sound like now.
You're right. Yeah, warts and all. You said it best, Gary. That's live music to me. I'll take it, even if it's not perfect. I'd rather have it live.
Back to the Counting Crows, though. I don't know why people hate on them so much. That album, August and Everything After, is amazing.
Oh, yeah. One of the best albums of the night.
Recovering the Satellites is really good also.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love all 4. I love the first 4 albums. I love every single song.
And it's funny because when I was in college, you couldn't walk past the dorm room without hearing August and Everything After. Everybody was freaking listening to that album. So I don't get the hate. But.
Yeah, I don't either.
Everybody go listen to some Counting Crows.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm a Beatles fan, so I'm going to represent some Beatles on my list. But Paul McCartney, Wings broke up, and then he released McCartney 2, which was a so-so. It was kind of an album that alienated people because it was not great crafted pop music. The song Coming Up was on it, which, was a hit, but everything else on there was very weird. I mean, you had Temporary Secretary, just some very weird stuff on there, which for the music buying public, I could see where it would alienate not just Wings fans or Paul McCartney fans or even Beatle fans, but just in general, people who enjoyed his music in the 1970s. And then he came out with Tug of War, which was sort of a return to form. But then Pipes of Peace, I think, again, was a bit of a step down. And then Give My Regards to Broad Street fiasco with the movie and the soundtrack, where he just kind of re-recorded some Beatles tracks done in a very 80s, kind of very cheesy production style. And then Press to Play came out, and that was, again, overproduced, a lot of 80s drum machine. It's just a very dated, has not aged very well. And so, Paul McCartney was kind of on the ropes. He was sort of circling the drain a little bit because his career had kind of gone, I don't want to say into free fall, because he was a member of the Beatles. So if you're a member of the Beatles, you're never going to be, your career is never going to be in jeopardy. But just in terms of his artistic integrity, I think if people were, sort of like, oh, well, he's kind of just going to be not releasing great music ever again. And then he came out with the Flowers and the Dirt album, which was definitely a comeback album for him. He did some collaborations with Elvis Costello. And all this preamble to say, and I apologize because it take me so long to get to the record, but the Unplugged album.
Wow.
God damn it, I want this on vinyl. This is a great, great album. This was his first tour. He went on tour for the first time since Wings broke up, and was doing a majority of stuff was Beatles and Wings tracks. But this, I mean, the stuff on here is just dynamite. He did I Lost My Little Girl, which was a song he recorded in the very earliest days of the Beatles. Here, There, and Everywhere. We Can Work It Out. I've Just Seen a Face. Every Night from McCartney. She's a Woman. And I Love Her. That Would Be Something. Again, also off McCartney. Blackbird. Good Rockin' Tonight. Junk. Just a great, great collection of songs. It's done in the Unplugged style, so it's live, but I just love his interpretations of some of those classic Beatles tracks and some of his solo stuff as well. I don't know if this has ever been released on vinyl. I could be wrong. I really don't know. I've never seen it, but I would love to have a reissue of this because it's just such a great, great album.
Dude, I am so glad you showed that because you just brought back all of these memories. Because my dad, that was one of his favorite albums. When it came out, he got it like the first day, and he used to play it every weekend. And man, I would buy that in a heartbeat. I'll let you know if it's on vinyl in a minute.
Yeah, nothing would make me happier. Well, something would make me happier. It's still on my list, but
That's another solid choice. That's a good idea.
So it was a limited edition numbered version. And the asking price right now, the lowest someone has it for sale is $150 on Discogs. But the median is $80. So the average price that it sells for is $80. So definitely should have a reissue.
Yeah.
Great
All right,
choice.
here you are, Steve. But that's another one of those albums. Like if you release that album, you know how many Beatles fans would queue in line just to be able to pick that up? I mean, they'd make a fortune on that record.
Yeah. I don't even think it should be Record Store Day. I think that should be a general release because I think it would be really popular. I think they should do the whole Unplugged series Get Neil Young out there, get him, I know Eric Clapton is easy to get, but there's so many good ones that are not in print. Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
All right. Before I make my pick, just want to say hi to Aaron. And, you know, I miss you being here. My pick is one that came out in, I think like 89. And I suppose the minute I show this, Josh is going to say, oh, I've got 3 copies of that on vinyl. But, and you know, Aaron has the Japanese version and this and that. My pick is Wake Me When It's Over and It's Done by Faster Pussycat. I love this record. This is actually my favorite Faster Pussycat record. I do like this a little bit better than the debut album. And, you know, the debut album, you can find that occasionally on vinyl. But this particular one, I have not seen on vinyl anywhere. And I just think this is a really solid record. It seems like people are always talking about the first record, which is, I love the first record. It's great. But I feel like the second record, their songs, some of them got a little more complex. You know, there was more structure to these songs. The playing was very good on it. There's better harmonies. It's just a very solid late 80s sleaze rock album that I think is kind of a step above a lot of the other things that were coming out around that time. And I don't know, I feel like here's another one where there's got to be a market for this. I mean, Faster Pussycat are still out there. You know, some version of them, Tamed Down, he's still in the band. So you still got the voice. So there's still some people out there who like it. And I think they would buy a reissue of that.
Well, let me tell you that first off, I think Purchase Street Records might have a copy. I'll let you know. It did get reissued about 10 years ago, maybe from Rhino for October. It is an awesome album, just like you said. I think that Poison Ivy, man, that's one of my favorite songs by them. You're absolutely right. Like the first one's a little bit more punky and the production is not as good. This one, they really came together. I know House of Pain was a huge hit, but I can't get enough of that album. I absolutely love that album.
And with a slip of the tongue, I'm in deep shit. I'm so bad off, I can almost taste it. Come on.
It's so good.
Good album.
Oh, I love that album, man. I love it. I'll let you know if they have it. So, but yeah, cool. It's a great one. Great choice.
Awesome.
Well, I feel like I don't have a lot of cool choices tonight.
Yeah, you do. What are you talking about?
Well, listen, because I'm going to follow Faster Pussycat with a 2021 album by Herb Alpert. I'm telling you, I don't have cool picks tonight, but I'm a huge Herb Alpert fan. And this is the reason I don't have this record, because it wasn't released on vinyl. There's a CD version of it. But I'm going to have to show you what the cover looks like on Spotify, because I didn't buy the CD because I'm hopefully waiting for the vinyl to come out. Herb Alpert, Catch the Wind. And he actually does a couple Beatles tunes on here I was looking at. He does Eleanor Rigby and Yesterday on here. Yeah, so I don't know. Like I said, I'm a huge Herb Alpert fan. Would love to see it on vinyl. That's why I haven't bought it. It's one of those CDs that is just like the paper sleeve, like no plastic tray, and it's like really cheaply made. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to spend $15 for this CD. I want the vinyl version to come out. But you know, I don't know if we're ever going to see it, because I don't know really how many Herb Alpert fans are waiting in the wings for a vinyl release of his latest record. But
is that Levon Helm on the cover?
Looks like him, right?
Yeah.
No, it's Herb. He's actually looking pretty good for his age.
I like the whipped cream one better, that cover, but
yeah. I don't know if you'd want that woman on here at her age though now.
I'd love a reissue of Whipped Cream and Other Delights, kind of like Phil Collins did, you know, where he did like an older version of himself. He took some of his old album covers, did an older version,
Yeah.
had the same model, you know, like now with whipped cream all over.
Right.
She is still alive. So
Yeah, well, let's make it happen. Can we lobby for that? I would pay for that reissue.
Yeah, I think there's been so many reissues of the album, though. That's the thing. But I guess, you know, if you had a different cover with the original model on it, they'd probably sell more of those.
It could just be a slip cover. Like you'd have the original cover underneath, but the slip cover over it would be like an updated,
Right.
just for shits and giggles, you know. I mean,
so my next one is a shout out to my brother Aaron. Aaron, we love you, buddy. Wish you were here. So me and Aaron have a list of obscure metal bands that we love, like Kick Tracy and I Napoleon, and there's just a list. They go on and on and on, and they're super rare, and some of them have been released in vinyl in like one country. But one that I know that we both love, and I'm doing this pick for me and you, Aaron, if you're watching, that is going to be Wild Side. Very much in the vein of Guns N' Roses. A lot of people don't know this band. They came out way too late. By the time this album came out, there was like the grunge explosion. Most people that have heard this album that like 80s hard rock love it. And that's why the vinyl is so coveted. You know, it never, ever, ever comes up on Discog, never comes up on eBay. But every once in a while, you'll see someone make a video that actually owns it. So yeah, if you love Guns N' Roses, you love 80s rock, this is, it's like sleaze rock, like Faster Pussycat. It's just fantastic. So Aaron, this is for both of us. I know this would probably be either Aaron's number one or number two. So there you go. Wild Side, great band.
cool.
well, it's funny because with all of our fourth picks, we're all doing Aaron, you know, albums Aaron would love, or you know. So mine is kind of a cross between sleaze metal, thrash metal, a little bit of doom metal. This is their second album. It came out in the early 80s. They were part of the new wave of Australian heavy metal in the early 80s. But I'm going to go with Crowded House and their second album, Temple of Low Men. Of course, Crowded House kind of formed in the ashes of Split Enz. You've got Neil Finn here, who was one of the main singer-songwriters, along with his brother. I can't remember. Tim Finn, I think, was his name, who actually joined the band for their follow-up to this album, Woodface. But you know, Crowded House, they had that song, Don't Dream It's Over, which was a big hit in the early 80s. And it was just a breath of fresh air. It didn't sound like much that was coming out at the time. It was kind of a sleeper hit. You really had no business being on the radio in the 1980s, but it was just such a breezy, great hit. And if you know anything about, you know, Neil Finn, he is such a great power pop composer. And this is a little bit of a darker album. It doesn't have any, I think the only radio single off of here was Better Be Home Soon. But just all the great elements of a Crowded House album. Very melodic. Almost, I almost say, like, if you enjoy like early Elvis Costello, you would enjoy this. I'm trying to think of, you know, like Oingo Boingo a little bit, but just really, really an underrated album. I don't really see many people talking, not just about Crowded House, but particularly about this album. It is available on vinyl. I mean, you can find it relatively cheap, but I would love just a reissue of this record, just a remastering or maybe something, because I know I've seen Woodface. I know Woodface is available, but can't seem to find a reissue of this one. But I would love it. It's a great album. I always, any chance I get, I'll talk about Crowded House, which isn't too often because not many people give a shit. But I do. This is one of my favorite albums of the 1980s. And if you love Split Ends, especially, and you haven't checked out much of Crowded House, definitely, if you find this one, grab it. They're still putting out music now. Unfortunately, Paul Hester, who is the guy who is upside down here, he actually committed suicide. I think in the late 90s. He was their drummer. But Neil Finn, and I forget who this guy is, but they're still carrying on as Crowded House. They have, like a kind of a revolving cast of band members, but yeah, Crowded House.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really listened to them besides the hits, so I'll have to check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love it. It's definitely, I think it's in many ways a better album than their debut, which is more popular because it had more hits on it. So that one was for you, Aaron. I know you probably have a bunch of copies of it, but and I think, I know it was on Tipsy Tuesday, I think, a couple of months back, but
Killer.
yeah.
Don't dream it's over, bitches.
Something so strong, like a fist in your face. Yeah.
It's so strong. Okay, this is our number one pick, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I've got a few to choose from, but I'll go ahead with one. And now I don't think this is coming out, but I know that they are reissuing the Coverdale Page album. And then Josh, you got me that unofficial reissue of it on vinyl. But what I would also like to see is them issue a live album of Coverdale Page, because they only did a handful of shows. They were scheduled to tour the US, but that fell through and they canceled that whole tour. So, you can watch some shitty footage on YouTube of it, but I think it would be fantastic to have, a remaster. There's tapes of it out there, something they could use, and they could transfer that to vinyl, clean it up, whatever they have. I'm sure they have some kind of soundboard recordings, but to have David Coverdale and Jimmy Page, a live album from them, concerts that most people have not gotten to hear. You've got two legends, so you get to hear stuff from the Coverdale Page album, which I love, and they throw in some Led Zeppelin songs. I think they'd throw in like a Whitesnake song or a couple like that. So, you get to hear Page play on that. You get to hear Coverdale sing a couple Zeppelin songs to go along with it. I just think it'd be a fun, great record to have. It'd be like a souvenir type thing of the tour that never was. I remember, I remember hearing it on the radio. They were going to be like down in Cincinnati, and I remember trying to get tickets, and then the next thing I know, it's like, oh no, the show's canceled. The tour was canceled, and you never heard anything about it. You never heard why or anything. It was just they canceled the tour. So I think it'd be a great live album to have.
I would buy it in a second, like no questions asked. I would buy it in a second, but I buy everything Whitesnake, so that's not a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, would be also Coverdale was actually, there was a band he was in before Whitesnake. It was called Deep Purple. It's kind of like his early stuff. But if you haven't checked out, I don't know if you can find any of their albums. That weren't terribly popular, but
Burn is
I'll look that up.
If Burn was a Whitesnake album, it'd be my favorite Whitesnake album. That's how much I love Burn. It's so good.
It is great.
It is great.
I tell you what, I love Stormbringer. That to me, Stormbringer and Burn, man, they're really
so close.
I'm still waiting for Patty Page and Jimmy Page to get together. Page and Page.
and
To
sing
compete with
Turn the
Alvin
Page.
Strauss and Robert Plant. That's what's
And they
gonna
do a
happen.
cover of Turn the Page.
Yeah.
Oh, you kill me, dude. I love it.
Well, my next artist kind of gets shit on quite a bit. He sang for a couple Maiden records that a lot of people don't like, but this is a shout out to Aaron, because I know Aaron loves Virtual 11 and the X Factor as much as I do. And I'm talking about Blaze Bayley. And Blaze Bayley has had a pretty successful solo career following Iron Maiden. And I just looked this album up just to make sure. This is his third record called Blood and Belief. And it is a heavy freaking record. And Blaze sounds amazing vocally. That's, I think a lot of times with Maiden, just the style that Steve Harris wrote in and the musical keys that he wrote in, it just didn't fit Blaze's vocal style. He sort of has a darker quality to his voice. He doesn't have the range that Bruce Dickinson had, but the guy can sing, and you really hear it in his solo records. Now, for anybody who's wondering what this record sounds like, this was produced, engineered, and mixed by Andy Sneap. So, it's the production is killer. The songs are great. Blaze is one of those metal singers that I think more people need to check out, because they might have given up on him through the Maiden years, and maybe they were pissed off at him because he was trying to follow Bruce Dickinson. But the guy has really made a name for himself with his solo records. This would be a great one to have on vinyl. This is from 2004.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard it. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah.
So my number one might be a little shocking, because I know on my channel I don't talk about the Beatles very much. And the reason why I don't talk about the Beatles is because there's so many people like Jeff that know so much more than I will ever know. So I don't want to embarrass myself. But I would love Let It Be Naked to be re-released. And I remember when that came out, and thinking to myself, like, discovering the album again for the first time, because it was never one of my favorite Let It Be albums. I mean, never one of my favorite Beatle albums. But that really got me to love a lot of the songs on that album. And I would love to own it on vinyl, and I wish they would re-release it. And I can't see myself spending $300 on a copy. So that would be my number one.
I kicked myself. They had that album out at Walmart, and I swear it was out there like just right before I was getting back into vinyl. And I remember Jeff talking about it early on, like when we were first becoming friends. And, he was saying, oh, I wish I could get this on vinyl. I'm so stupid that I didn't, and blah, blah, blah. And at the time I thought, I wonder if my Walmart still has that. I thought, how fucking cool if I could buy that and send it to them. And of course they didn't have it by that time. I'd waited far too long, but because it was out there for the longest time. I remember seeing it and thinking, oh man, that sounds interesting. Taking off some of the stuff on there. But yeah, man, I really wish I would have bought that. I mean, could have got it for like, 20 some bucks. And
Yeah, now it's like, $500 on Discogs and on eBay. It's just gotten so out of hand. That was also my number one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's why
dude.
I had it. So that's all right. That's why I had it, right here. The thing about this album is that, Paul McCartney had no input into Phil Spector producing what became the Let It Be album. And he felt that Phil Spector overproduced his tracks, particularly The Long and Winding Road, which had a female choir on there. It had a lot of overdubs that he did not approve or consent to. So really they took his track and Phil Spector, overdubbed a bunch of stuff on it. So that was always a sore spot for Paul McCartney. And so I think, this album was really marketed as, this is the real stripped down Let It Be version that, without all the Phil Spector strings and choirs and all the meddling that he did, you know, the overproduction that he did on the original Let It Be album. And actually, it's really not. I mean, it's no less authentic than the original Let It Be. It's just that Paul McCartney oversaw, you know, Paul McCartney and, you know, I think to some extent, obviously Yoko and, you know, Ringo, you know, had some input into it, but they still, I mean, there's still some overdubbing on it. There's still some, you know, a hybrid of two different takes. So it's really not any nearer to the original concept of this is raw and this is, you know, stripped down. And I mean, it's really not. It was marketed that way, but it's really a lot of, you know, a couple takes kind of patched together. But it's still a great listening experience. I mean, that being said, if you take it for what it is at face value, I know a lot of people prefer these versions to the actual versions that were on Let It Be. I think, you know, truth be told, this is probably a better album, better sounding album than the original Let It Be was. And it's got Don't Let Me Down on here. It's interesting to hear these songs in a different order than they were on the original Let It Be album. And it starts off with Get Back, which of course was the last track on the original Let It Be album. There's no Dig It on here. There's none of that. Before Two of Us, there's no you know, the John Lennon thing, you know, I Dig a Pygmy by Charles Hodgson. I mean, there's like none of that stuff on here. They trimmed away all of that. In fact, in some cases where there was spoken dialogue after the end of a track, they kind of faded it out very early. So you're not getting any kind of that audio verite stuff that Phil Spector included on the original Let It Be album, but it, you know, it's still very enjoyable. In some cases, it's different takes. So this is definitely a great compliment to the original Let It Be. I think a lot of us were hoping when we knew there was going to be a remix, when we knew there was going to be the Get Back documentary, that kind of, you know, one of the Easter eggs or one of the bonuses was going to be that we were going to get a reissue of this. Haven't seen it happen yet. I'm still holding out hope that they will, because this album has gotten so ridiculously expensive. But I think now, I mean, there's no better time than now when everybody's, you know, into Get Back and the whole Let It Be. You know, everybody's kind of reflecting on that, but I don't know. I would love to see it. Not holding my breath, but it would be, I mean, that's definitely number one on my wish list in terms of, you know, Beatles stuff that has yet to be re-released. So we will see.
Tell you what, if the record companies want to make some money, they just need to watch this episode. We just gave you some great fucking ideas that you can use, man.
Well, and so many of these, it's like, God, you know, I mean, you could really, I mean, some of these people, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a windfall just waiting. Any of these reissues, fans of these bands or artists are just clamoring for. Take our money.
Here's the funny thing, Jeff, is if they release Let It Be Naked for $50, I would buy it. Because I'm like, well, it's better than 500. I don't want to spend $50 on it, but that's kind of the state that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's crazy.
Yeah, well, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than 500.
Exactly.
$450 cheaper.
Yeah. It's hard to pick your pick, Jeff. Like, I assumed when you were talking about Paul McCartney before, it's like, oh, that's gonna be his Beatle pick, so I can do Let It Be Naked. But wrong.
Yeah, but that just goes to show. I mean, it's you know, I think every Beatles fan would tell you they would love to get that, you know, reissue on vinyl. And I wish, you know, back in the day, I just wasn't thinking in terms of vinyl. I think I had a handful of records back when this CD came out. I just, you know, it was only, I think, you know, most stores, I think we're only carrying the CD. I think you might have had to get it online or something. You know, I don't know. But, you know, it's one of those, when you had the opportunity to buy it, you thought, oh, well, you know, it'll always be available, or I can get it later. And then, no, you can't. So
I would have bought 4 copies and you guys would all have it.
Yeah. Well, I'm always hoping, you'll wander into some store and they don't realize what they have and they're selling it for like $20, but that's never going to happen. Well, great picks, guys. Definitely miss Aaron, because I know he would have had some very cool records to show.
He tried to show 20 of them.
Yes.
Yeah, he would have had about 10 or 11. There would have been some honorable mentions, I'm sure. But, nonetheless, I feel like we tried to represent him well, nonetheless. But we will see. Hopefully, we'll get some good stuff this year. We got Record Store Day coming up. The year is still young, so who knows what the rest of the year has in store for us. Maybe we'll even get some stuff we didn't realize we even wanted, which sometimes is the case. Like, I didn't realize I wanted so desperately a mono version of Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And we're going to get that. So happy day when that gets released. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching.